Hey guys, it's Dr. Bickling from Own It Dental. As always, here's my contact information if you need to get a hold of me. And if you guys are enjoying these videos, please do hit that like button. It's like right down there somewhere, right? It's right down there. And if anything, hit it just to make sure it works. Speaking of working, how much should your associates work? What's the right number of hours they should work per week? It may not be what you think it is, so let's dig into it. For those of you who know me, you know that I'm a big proponent of production over being busy. I think that busy can be the enemy of being productive in many cases. If you were to give me the choice of 3 hours of an opening in my schedule, so long as I had a few hygiene exams or maybe a couple of emergencies, or having 6 patients in that same 3 hours, I'll take the 3-hour opening any day of the week. Because I know that there's going to be an emergency walking in the door, or I'm going to see something in hygiene that I can turn into production. I always have a saying, big spaces equals big cases. Little spaces equals little cases. So this is just one of those things that in my schedule, I'd much rather be productive than being busy. And I've said in the past, and you guys have known this, I've talked about what's the right number of hygiene checks to do in a month for a doctor. And we're going to dig into that in just a second, review that. But what's the right number of hours in a week that a doctor should work? All right, so let's dig into it. Like I said, I've shown you these in the past, and this has been true with all of my offices. This has been true with all of my doctors, and this is true with all of my clients. There comes a point where being busy becomes the enemy of being productive. So this chart here is the average number of hygiene exams versus the average production per hygiene exam versus how many hygiene exams per month. And this orange line represents the number of hygiene exams on average that a doctor is doing. And you can see as the number of hygiene exams increases, the production per hygiene exam decreases. But once it gets to a certain level, in this instance, right around 200 hygiene exams per month, per doctor, the production falls off a cliff. It's like there's a tipping point of where the doctor just gets too busy, and busy starts to become the enemy of being productive. But then once those hygiene exams start to plummet again, look at the production per filled hygiene starts to go back up. Knowing these numbers is very important because doing more isn't always doing more. Sometimes this is working harder and not working smarter. But like I said, this is the same across the board. This is true for all of my doctors, this is true for all of my offices, and this is true for all of my clients. As the number of hygiene exams start to increase, the production per hygiene starts to go down. And once it hits a certain threshold, boom, it falls right off a cliff. Now, that mileage may vary for each of you. That number where it starts to drop off a cliff is different for everybody. A high-performing doctor might be able to see 250, 300 hygiene exams per month. But I'm telling you, most associates are they're gonna top out right around 150 to 200 hygiene exams per month before their production starts to drop off a cliff. Here's another one of those. You can see as the number of hygiene checks per doctor starts to rise, it hits a certain threshold, and then boom, it just drops off a cliff. And then as they dip down below that, production goes right back up to normal. So there is a tipping point when it comes to the proper number of hygiene exams that a doctor can do, and once they reach their threshold, they just drop off a cliff and production just goes, they're working like crazy, but they're not making any money. And again, that's the definition of working harder, not smarter. But what if a doctor is working 6 days a week, 7 days a week? They're going to see a lot of patients. So that begs the question, what's the right number of hours a doctor should work in a week? And you might be surprised what the answer is. So this graph here comes from our friends at ChrisAd Dental Marketing. For any of you who have been to their No Limits conferences, I highly recommend it. And you may have seen this slide, unless you got to be paying attention the entire time. If you haven't been, the slide may have gotten past you. But what this slide represents is the number of hours that a doctor might work in a week, and what's the average production each of those numbers of hours represents. Now, I've long since said that, you know, part-time doctors don't tend to typically do as well as full-time doctors, and I still stand by that. You know, most cases when I brought in a part-time doctor, it just simply didn't work out as well for them, nor did it work out quite well for our office. Now, yes, I am a part-time doctor, and you know, but I'm the exception instead of the rule. So, you know, but working on a per patient basis, you can see that when a doctor only works about 6 hours a week, they on average produce about $900 per hygiene check. And that's actually not too bad. That's more than the national average, but you can see it's not the highest one on here. You know, and when they're working, you know, 25, 26 hours a week, you know, this is still pretty darn good, but not as high as it could be. It looks like the ideal sweet spot for doctors is right around the 32, 33 hours a week work week. You know, and it looks like it's almost $2,000 here. And what's this one? You know, $1,700 for 32, 33 hours a week. And then once you start getting past 34 hours a week, it drops off a cliff, you know, and as you get to 40 hours a week, it's the lowest that it is. And I have clients that are like this, you know, solo practicing doctors, their practices have grown, they're seeing 300, 350 hygiene checks, you know, they're working 40, 50-hour work weeks, but they're only producing $300, $350 per hygiene check. You know, these doctors, if they just brought on an associate, you know, split the time with the associate, split the hygiene checks with the associate, they'd be working half as much and probably producing twice as much on a per patient basis. So in my opinion, that's the definition of working smarter, not harder. Bring on people, help to carry the workload. So 30 to 32 hours a week seems to be the sweet spot. So let's just review everything. The sweet spot for production, you know, in terms of hygiene exams, it's about 150 to 200 on average. Again, your mileage may vary, but I will tell you from my experience, as soon as I get to a point where I'm seeing, my doctors are seeing 150 hygiene checks per doctor on average, I'm looking for a new doctor. I don't want it to get to 200 because I know that it's going to fall off a cliff right around there or shortly after there. So if I'm seeing 300 filled hygiene in a month, that's cause for 2 doctors. If I have 450 hygiene, then that's cause for 3 doctors, and so on and so forth. And you can do the math. As far as the sweet spot on hours, 32 to 34 hours per week seems to be the sweet spot for production for our doctors. After that, I think they just get tired, they get burnt out, they want to do something else. Now, I don't care how you portion out these 32 to 34 hours, but I will say this. I prefer my doctors working either only 3 days a week or 4 days a week, or maybe alternating between the two. We might have a couple of long days in there where they might come in, get a couple of 12-hour days, but then they maybe work a half a day and then maybe every other weekend or something like that. This always gives them the opportunity to recharge those batteries, get stuff done in the middle of the week, and they always have either 3 or 4 days off during the week. So it gives them plenty of opportunity to recharge those batteries. They're still coming in, they're earning those hours, but they're doing it on fewer days. And again, if we identify where these sweet spots are and we give our doctors the opportunity to be as productive as possible instead of being as busy as possible, maybe our offices will see a boom in production because of it. So in any case, I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, I'm Dr. Bickling. Here's my contact information, and I'll see you on the next one. I'll talk to you soon. Bye. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more content like it, go to ownitdental.com or click the link above and check out my services. I have dozens of hours of training videos and have negotiated reduced lab fees for all my clients. So if you want to get out of the dental chair and start owning your business, go to ownitdental.com and check out my services, and I'll see you soon.